Shalom, 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 shalom. As always, first I want to give all the praises and the glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, to Yahweh, Barakah Kodash, the learners, to the apostles and to the elders of Great Millstone. Yahweh is the name of the Most High. Yahweh Shai is the name of the Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. As always, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and to the 144,000 of the true children of Israel. All praise and glory to Yahweh Bashim Shai. So, Esau, Edom, is modern Jewry. Esau, Edom, is modern Jewry. Now remember, the Hebrew word Edom means red, and it's derived from the founder Esau, right? The elder son of our patriarch Isaac, because he was born red all over. As a young adult, he sold his birthright to his brother Jacob for a red cottage. Now the Tanakh describes the Edomites, the Tanakh is the Old Testament, as the descendants of Esau. So perhaps referencing this familiar connection, the Old Testament commands, when people got that, they go to that scripture where it says, "Thou shalt not abhor an Edomite, for he is thy brother." That just means hate, basically, right? Be disgusted with him, right? But that word Edomite in Deuteronomy 23:7 is not talking about Esau. It's talking about the Assyrians, right? Because it's a mispronunciation. So people go to Deuteronomy 23:7 to say, "Oh, it says thou shalt not abhor an Edomite, for he is thy brother." But that word Edomite there in Deuteronomy 23:7 is not actually talking about Esau, right? It's talking about the Assyrians. Anyway, Edom was an ancient kingdom, as you may or may not know, in Transjordan, just located between Moab and the northeast, right? And the west of the Arabian desert, basically. Most of that former territory is now divided between Israel and Jordan. Edom appears in written sources relating to the late Bronze Age and to the Iron Age, to the Levant, such as the scriptures in Egyptian records and in the Mesopotamian records. All right, Edom. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to play this quick video here, and then I'm going to bring out something from the Jewish Encyclopedia, the 1925 Jewish Encyclopedia. But first, I want you to listen to what these scholars have to say here about modern Jewry.
I'd go and have a look at Jewish literature to see what they say about their origins. And here we see three quotes. And the first is in the 1925 Jewish Encyclopedia, which says that Esau, Edom, is modern Jewry. And of course, this is contrary to what most people believe today, which is that the Jews are God's chosen people because they are the Israelites. But here, the Jewish literature is saying that they are actually from the tribe of Edom, not the tribe of Israel. In the Jewish Almanac in 1980, it says, strictly speaking, it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew or to call a contemporary Jew an Israelite or Hebrew. And that's because, truthfully speaking, they are not the Hebrews or Israelites, they are really the Edomites. And also, we see here in the Encyclopedia Judaica that Edomite Jews began to call themselves Hebrews and Israelites in 1860.
And so when he's saying he's coming to redeem, while he would say, redeem Israel, O God, out of all their troubles. First thing they need to be redeemed at, more dangerous than Hamas, more dangerous than Muslim neighbors, are internal these, and there's another biblical name, these who say they are Jews and are not.
I was going to ask you about that. In Revelation 3:8, I think, I was going to ask you that question. Does that refer to this time, or can it refer to this time?
It can. It's Revelation 3:9. Indeed, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews and are not, but lie. Yeah. And there's a different application for it, but we understand this is really there's a practical storyline I've shared before on a program maybe a year ago, I don't know, about the Khazarian mafia and the Khazarian Jews, and I'll just say the briefest understanding of it and how this applies to them, because it's about 1,000 years ago. Really, these are almost like marauding tribes, not like tribes of the tribe of Israel, but they're based out of the Ukraine, ironically or not, based out of Kiev. And these were those that would go around, take new lands, and they were known, they had brought the Babylonian religion with them. They were doing cannibalism, human trafficking, no boundaries, sex interaction. They were so wicked that the story goes that he who led, I believe he was a Tsar of Russia, when he had won a battle against him, gave him an option. And in some way or another, this is a truth that they were told, again, 1,000 years ago, you must choose a religion. You all are worthless people. You're not training your kids into any kind of civility, reasonableness. And he gave them a choice of the three Abrahamic religions. And the three Abrahamic religions being either, at the time, we'd say Catholicism, Christianity. The other one is Islam, and the other was Judaism. And so they, in a very pragmatic way, the Khazarians chose Judaism because the Pope and the Vatican, they were very hands-on, forcible conversions. And so it was not a light thing to go under that, nor was it Islam. It's a heavy yoke on both. And so Judaism would leave them alone. And so they did some things of incorporating some level of, they weren't, first of all, they were not Semites.
That is one of the most ridiculous, error-filled, ugly, despicable rants I've heard. I don't know how else to describe it. I've got whole books on the history of the Khazars, a Turkic people that cannibalism, human trafficking, sexual immorality, there's nothing in historical accounts associating them with that. That's number one. Number two, they were not forced by a czar to choose a world religion. Complete myth. You might as well tell me that Abraham Lincoln was counseled by Elvis Presley about freeing the slaves. That has more historical truth to it than this drivel that we just heard on a major charismatic platform, as Steve Schultz and Johnny Enlow speak. And it's one of the standard anti-Semitic lies that today's Jews are not really Jews, or Jewish leaders in Israel with Ashkenazi background are not really Jews. It's just one of the standard anti-Semitic lies. As far as the alleged conversion of the Khazars, you can read it, Yehuda Halevi's book, The Khazari, that it may be true that as there is debate and discussion, there are Turkic people a little over 1,000 years ago that some of the leaders or some of the people did, in fact, convert to Judaism and then became part of the larger Jewish people. Khazars as a whole disappear from history. That's it. End of subject. There is no Khazarian mafia. There is not a single Jew on the planet that can be traced back in any definitive way to the Khazars. Zero. There is not a single Jew on the planet that can be traced back in any definitive way to the Khazars. Zero. There is not a single Jew on the planet that can be traced back in any definitive way to the Khazars. Zero.
There is not a single Jew on the planet that can be traced back in any definitive way to the Khazars. Zero.
Are you familiar with the Khazar theory? There's a theory, it's widely accepted as anti-Semitic, that Ashkenazi Jews come from the Khazars and they're not Levantine. But DNA tests.
It's not anti-Semitic. It's a question of fact. So Shlomo Sand, for example, has argued that, I think probably exaggerated, but it's simply a question of fact. If my ancestors from the Ukraine have Khazar roots, changes nothing. I'm Jewish. My grandfather was Jewish. My family happens to have a story saying that we're descended from the Baal Shem Tov. Okay, that's part of the culture. Doesn't matter what the DNA shows.
There's not a single Jew on the planet that can be traced back in any definitive way to the Khazars. Zero.
First, let me, when you see Ashkenazic Jews sharing high similarity to Romanians and Hungarians. This is because both of these populations were offshoots of the Khazars. They were both founded by these members of the Caucasus who ruled this area of north of the Black Sea, where we have South Russia nowadays, between the 7th and 13th centuries. Very powerful empire. They converted to Judaism in the 8th century, and they sent offshoots to Eastern Europe. And we still some Ashkenazic Jews are mapped to this region of Ukraine. They're not all mapped to Ashkenaz. Most of them are, but some of them are mapped to Ukraine, and we can see very nicely some kind of migration route using GPS.
There's not a single Jew on the planet that can be traced back in any definitive way to the Khazars. Zero.
So, as you can see, that was Dr. Brown, Edom, who still seems to believe that these so-called Jews in the land of Israel are not Khazars, are not Khazarians. Khazars are Edomites. They go back to Esau. They come directly from Esau's grandson, which are Amalek, the Amalekites. Now, this man here, Dr. Brown, as you can see, he seems to believe that the so-called Jews are not Khazars, they're not Edomites, they're not Esau, whereas the top scholars, this professor here, PhD, Ashkenazi Jews, geneticist, he knows for a fact that they are Khazars. The bulk of those so-called Jews in Israel are Khazars. He made it clear. Noam Chomsky made it quite clear as well that the bulk of those so-called Jews that are living in the land of Israel are descendants of the Khazars. The Khazars are descendants of Amalek. Amalek is Esau's grandson, which makes them all Edomites. So he made it quite clear. This is a top PhD linguist, Noam Chomsky, one of the most renowned professors in the United States of America, knows that the bulk, the majority of those so-called Jews in Israel today descend from the Khazars. The Khazars descend from the tribe of Amalek. Amalek is Esau's grandson. But this devil here wants you to believe otherwise. You see, but there's no way. There's no going back now. There's no going back. He doesn't believe that they are. This devil here wants you to believe that they don't descend from Esau, Edom. All right. Then you've got these two Bible theologians who know that the Khazars are modern day. This guy here, Johnny Enlow on your right, and I think his name is something Schultz on the left. They are Bible so-called theologians who know that the bulk of those people that call themselves Ashkenazi Jews descend from the Khazars as well. They made it quite clear as well. Now, I'm going to read something to you from the Jewish Encyclopedia. So this is their own book. It's called the Jewish Encyclopedia, right? So this is their own book that we're looking at here. Now, this is the 1925 Jewish Encyclopedia, written by their own rabbis, right? So we're going to read, because they want you to believe that Esau, Edom is done away with, all right? And as we know, they're not done away with, the Edomites. They're here today. They're still amongst us today, calling themselves Jewish, and Europeans, so-called white man. They want you to believe that they're done away with, right? So let's just read a little bit about this, right? Edom, the Greek word for it is Idumea, all right? For Edom. Edom is the name which was given to Esau, the firstborn son of Isaac, on the day he sold his birthright to Jacob for a mess of pottage, the reddish color of which gives it its name, right? It said the country which was subsequently inhabited by Esau and his descendants was called the field of Edom, or the land of Edom. It says Edom in the Bible. Edom in the Bible is also used as an equivalent for Edomites. Occurs but once, right? So why is it used equivalent for the Edomites? Because the Edomites are the descendants of Esau. It says the country had before that been called Mount Seir, right? From Seir, who is the progenitor of the Horites, who lived there previously, all right? Because they took Mount Seir from the Horites, the Edomites, because it was promised to them by the Most High that he was going to give them Mount Seir. And there's a reason for that, as we're going to see. It says, according to Josephus, the name Seir is due to the fact that Esau was hairy. Now, Esau wasn't born hairy. Always remember this. Some people like to say, oh, Esau wasn't born hairy. Esau was born red like a hairy garment, because the Israelites used to dye certain garments red, certain material, I think it was goat's skins, red, and they used to use it to cover the tops of their tabernacle, their tents, right? That they lived in, right? So it says here, according to Josephus, the name Seir is due to the fact that Esau was hairy, right? Now, could Esau have been hairy when he had grown up and got older? Maybe. We don't know if Esau was actually hairy when he was older. But Esau was not born hairy, just so you understand. He was born red like a hairy garment, all right? As we see today, the so-called European man today, the so-called white man today is different shades of red. That's what he is. He's different shades of red. Always remember that. There's no such thing as white people or black people. We are different shades of brown. They are different shades of red. Pink is a shade of red. Hence, Esau's color when he was born, he was a shade of red. It says, but according to Genesis 6, the mountain was called Seir long before Esau's birth. All right? There you go. So just to show that Esau wasn't born hairy, because the word Seir means hairy. All right? It says the boundaries of Edom are very concisely defined. The country stretched along the route followed by the Israelites from the Sinaitic Peninsula to the Kadesh Barnea, that is along the east side of the Valley of Arab, right? Let's go down. I want to just kind of jump down a bit here. We keep to it, no problem. It says the boundary between Moab and Edom was the brook Zered. The ancient capital of Edom was Bozrah. In the time of Amaziah was its principal stronghold, right? Elath and Ezon Gibeon, its seaports. So we're just going through a little bit of history here, right? Right. Okay, contrary to the promise of Isaac that Esau's dwelling would be of the fatness of the earth and of the dew of heaven, Edom was a rocky and calcareous country, because that prophecy, the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven, wasn't meant to be fulfilled back then. The beginning of the fulfillment of that prophecy, you could have said, began during the Greeks or the Romans, but it is now. This is the actual fulfillment of that prophecy is today. That Esau's dwelling would be the fatness of the earth and the dews of the heaven, right? That prophecy is being fulfilled today. So where he lived in Mount Seir, it wasn't meant to be fulfilled when he was living in Mount Seir, which was a rocky and calcareous country. It says Esau is described as a man who subsisted by hunting, right? So he was into hunting, all right? Remember, Esau was a well-known hunter, Esau, all right? It says that Esau is described as a man who subsisted by hunting, and as his descendants, the Edomites, did live in amid rocky fatness and mountain heights. The name Mount Seir, or Mount of Esau, shows that Edom was a mountainous country, and therefore it was called by later writers Gabaline, the mountainous. So it says here, according to the Bible, immediately after Isaac's death, Esau settled in Mount Seir, right, as we read, where he had lived before. The Edomites soon became powerful enough to extirpate the Horites. The Horites were the original inhabitants of Mount Seir. 1 second. They are the original inhabitants of Mount Seir, right? The Horites. So it says the Edomites soon became powerful enough to extirpate the Horites, the former inhabitants of the country, whose ways of life they adopted. All right. Now, Esau does that everywhere he conquers. It says here, after they conquered the Horites, the former inhabitants of the country, whose ways of life they adopted. This is what the Edomites have always done. When the Romans took over the land from the Etruscans, because the Etruscans are the original inhabitants of Rome, which are the sons of Japhet, all right, children of Japhet, the Romans took on the ways of the Etruscans and adopted all of their ways. This is what the Romans did. And remember, the Romans are Edomites as well. So Esau does the same thing today. Everywhere he conquers, he adopts and takes on that lifestyle. Same thing he did with our heritage. They conquered us, enslaved us, and what did they do? They took on our lifestyles, our beliefs, our culture, so forth and so on. So this is a trait, what the Edomites do. It says here, as among the Horites, each tribe was ruled by a prince or chief, whose position resembled probably that of an Arab sheikh. Later, the Edomites organized themselves, right? Let's go on to the next page here. Oops. It's page 41. So later, the Edomites organized themselves, oops, come down a bit, into a kingdom and had 8 kings. When the first king in Israel began his reign, however, a list of chiefs given after that of the kings shows that subordinate chiefs ruled under the sovereignty of the king. In the time of Moses, both chiefs and kings are mentioned. When the king of Edom refused to allow the children of Israel to pass through his land on their way to the land of Canaan, the Israelites were expressly ordered not to wage war upon the Edomites, as the Most High said, right? I think that was the king's highway that we could have passage through, all right? Okay, so we're here. It says the Israelites were expressly ordered not to wage war upon the Edomites, but to go round their country. It says neither, and it's just showing the reference to all of the scriptures where you can find this information, right? Where you see in the brackets. It says, neither did the king of Edom attempt hostilities against the Israelites, though he prepared to resist aggression. Nothing further is heard of the Edomites until their defeat by Saul 400 years later. So nothing more was heard about the Edomites until 400 years later, after Moses and the children of Israel interaction with them when they was on their way to Canaan, right, after their deliverance out of Egypt. So there was a space of 400 years where nothing was heard about them, where they'd gone to, what they were doing. They just, in a sense, disappeared from society, that nobody was writing anything. No one knew what they was doing. No one was, the Israelites wasn't interacting with them, basically, And obviously no other major society was writing about them or interacting with them. So they just kind of disappeared from the books of history for 400 years. So we kind of see the same thing now, right? Since the Renaissance, when they would have known that they were the Edomites then, these Europeans, nearly 400 to 500 years passed where no one heard or knew who the Edomites were. So a time period can pass. It doesn't mean that the nation is done away with. It just means that other nations weren't interacting with them or writing about them to know what their yearly, year-to-year things that they were doing, what they were doing, how they were doing things. Time just passed, but they still exist as a nation, as you're going to see. So it says, nothing further is heard of the Edomites until their defeat by Saul 400 years later. That's when they came back in. That's when people now start to acknowledge that those Edomites are still about, and this is where they reside in Mount Seir, so forth and so on. It says here, 40 years later, David overthrew the Edomites in the Valley of Salt, and his general Joab slew all the males. People that say, oh, well, when David's general slew all of the males, all the Edomites were done away with. No, as you're going to see. Because there's no end of any of the, as the Bible says, there's no end of any of the nations, right? It says, 40 years later, David overthrew the Edomites in the Valley of Salt, and his general Joab slew all the males. Hadad, one of the royal family, fled to Egypt after David's death, returned and endeavored to excite his countrymen to rebellion. So the reason why the Bible speaks about Hadad, because he was the most famous Edomite that escaped. But there were still Edomites there, as it says here. He endeavored to excite his countrymen to rebellion. So Hadad come back to try to rouse up his fellow Edomites to rebellion against David's kingdom. It says, failing, in which he went to Syria. Right? So Josephus writes about this, right? In the Antiquities of Josephus, as it shows you here. It says, from that time, Edom remained subject to Israel. David placed over the Edomites Israelite governors or prefects, and this form of government seems to have continued under Solomon. It says here, when Israel divided into two kingdoms, Edom became a dependency of Judah. In the time of Jehoshaphat, a king of Edom is mentioned, who was probably a Judean appointed by the king of Judah. It is stated further that the inhabitants of Mount Seir invaded Judea in conjunction with Ammon, the Japanese, and Moab, the so-called Chinese, right? That's why the scripture says that they've all became confederate against us. It says here, and that the invaders turned against one another and were all destroyed. So they eventually turned against one another, all right? Moab, Ammon, and Edom. It says, Edom revolted against Jehoram, elected a king of its own, and afterwards retained its independence. So they rebelled against Jehoram, and they elected a king of their own, and they retained their independence, Edom, the Edomites. It says here, Amaziah attacked the Edomites and slew 10,000 in the battle, and 10,000 more being dashed to pieces from the cliffs. Amaziah was another king of Israel. And 10,000 of Judah, and 10,000 he threw off the cliffs. Their stronghold, Selah, was taken, but the Israelites were never able to subdue Edom completely. All right. So it's referenced in 2 Kings 14, 2 Chronicles 25, where you can get the stories on all of this, what we're reading here. But this is just a synopsis of what took place between us and the Edomites. In the time of Nebuchadnezzar, the Edomites took an active part in the plunder of Jerusalem and in the slaughter of the Jews, right? Psalms 137 tells you that, right? It is an account of these cruelties that Edom was so violently denounced by the prophets. and we continue to denounce them today, right? These Edomites, but in the spirit. It says Edom is mentioned in the cuneiform inscriptions in the form of Udemy. So in the cuneiform, which is, I think, Mesopotamia, the Assyrians, Babylonians, in their inscriptions, they're referred to as the Udemy, right? The Udemy. 3 of its kings are known from the same source. Kaus, Malacca, at the time of Tiglath-Pileser, who was a king of Assyria, all right, 745 BC. Malik Ramu, at the time of Sennacherib, which was another king of Assyria, 705 BC. And Kaus Gabri, at the time of Eshodon, another king of Assyria, 680 BC. So these 3 took part in the captivity of the northern kingdom. It started under Tiglath-Pileser, and it was, I believe it was Sennacherib or Shalmaneser who actually took them into captivity, the Israelites. So they wrote about the Edomites during their times, right? And they referred to them as the Udumis, right? The Udumis. It says, according to the Egyptian inscriptions, the Aduma, so the Egyptians called them the Aduma, at the times extended their possessions down as far as the borders of Egypt. It says, after the conquest of Judah by the Babylonians, the Edomites were allowed to settle in southern Palestine. So this is the beginning of them in doing incursions into our land, into Jerusalem, into Judah, the southern kingdom. This is the beginning of the Edomites now incursion on Judah after we were conquered by the Babylonians. So it says, after the conquest of Judah by the Babylonians, the Edomites were allowed to settle in southern Palestine. At the same time, they were driven by the Nabateans from Idumea. In southern Palestine, they prospered for more than 4 centuries, 400 years. Until what? Until Judas Maccabees conquered their territory for a time. They were again, which was 163 BC. It says they were again, I believe that should say subjugated or subdued. Let me just see. Let's quickly go to it. Where is it? Okay. They were again subdued by John Hyrcanus, by whom they were forced to observe, it should say, Israelite rites and laws. This was the great conversion, the first major conversion of these small hats, who they refer to as Jewish people today, to convert to the rites and the laws of the Israelites under John Hyrcanus. So this was the first major conversion of them before they became known as the Khazars in 600 AD. So this took place 125 BC. It began with Judas Maccabees and John Hyrcanus. I believe he's the son of Simon Maccabees, I believe. John Hyrcanus is, I believe he's the son of Simon Maccabees. It says that they were then incorporated with, it should say, the Israelite nation, because we were never known as a Jewish nation. We were always known as an Israelite nation, especially back then. So now these small hats, these Edomites, were incorporated with the Israelite, shouldn't say Jewish, it should say Israelite nation. And their country was called by the Greeks and Romans Idumea, right? Because the Greeks and Romans, which are Edomites as well. So you understand, they're all the same people. But when they conquer places, what did we read? The Edomites take on and assume their identities. So the Edomites started calling themselves Greeks, where they are not the original Greeks, as we know. The Edomites start calling themselves Romans, when we know they're not the original Romans. The original Romans are the sons and daughters of the Etruscans. The original Greeks were the sons and daughters of, is it Javan? Which are the sons and daughters of Japhet. But the Edomites conquered them and took on their culture and then called themselves Greeks. The Edomites conquered the Etruscans, took on their culture and called themselves Romans because Rome became their capital. This is what they do when they conquer. So these, until centuries later, they believe that they're Greeks, just like the Romans. Centuries later, they believe that they were Romans, but they're all Idumeans. They're all Edomites. The Greeks, the Romans, they're all Edomites. But this is what they did. When the Edomites conquered, when Alexander the Great or Philip the Macedonian, when he conquered the Greeks, they took on the Greek customs and started calling themselves Greeks. When the Edomites conquered the Etruscans, who were the original Romans, they took on their culture and started calling themselves Romans. Just like what they did when they conquered the Horites, just like what we read. When they conquered the Horites, they took on their customs and started to have chiefs and kings and tribes and so forth, and they were setting their governments in the same way as the Horites when they took down the Horites from Mount Seir. No different than what they do today. It says here, it says they were then incorporated with the Israelite nation, and their country was called by the Greeks and Romans Idumea, right? So it says here, with Antipater began the Idumeans dynasty. So who is Antipater? Antipater is King Herod's father, and it should say this. With Antipater began the Idumean dynasty that ruled over Judea till its conquest by the Romans. Immediately before the siege of Jerusalem, 20,000 Idumeans, which are the Edomites, under the leadership of John, Simeon, Phoenicius, and Jacob, appeared before Jerusalem to fight in behalf of the zealots who were besieged in the temple. So why did they fight? Because now they themselves started to believe that they were Israelites. Because remember, John Hyrcanus converted them in 125 BC. So now they've been living amongst us for over a century, because this is taking place now around 66 AD. This is like 200 years later after their major conversion after John Hyrcanus. So they believe now that they're Israelites. So they're fighting alongside us as Israelites, but they are Edomites. Because we always know who they were, that they were the Edomites. We would have always known, the Judeans, the Israelites would have always known that those people were Edomites that practiced the laws, commandments, and statutes, because they were living amongst us and living in parts of our land in southern Palestine. So it says here, from this time the Idumeans ceased to be, see, let's tell you here. From this time the Idumeans ceased to be a separate people, though the name Idumea still existed at the time of Jerome. So they ceased to be a separate people. They believed that they were Jews, just like those small hats today. They believed that they were raised to be Jews. So from the time of 70 AD, from that time on, the Idumeans, Edomites, they ceased to be separate people. They believed that they are Jews now. Though the name Idumea still exists in the time of Jerome. It says, according to the law, the congregation cannot receive descendants of a marriage between an Israelite and an Edomite until the 4th generation. That goes into a part to do with the what they say in the Talmudis, I believe, what they're reading from there. So this is where I want to go to here. The name Edom is used by the Talmudis, those that study at the Babylonian Talmud and the Jerusalem Talmud, which are these modern day Jewish people. The name Edom is used by the Talmudists for the Roman Empire. So these small hats are telling you that they know the Romans are Edomites, but they want you to believe that they're not Edomites as well, that they're not Amalek. But the name Edom is used by the Talmudists. These are the rabbis that put together the Talmud, that study out the Talmud, that they study out of, for the Roman Empire. And they applied to Rome every passage of the Bible referring to Edom or Esau. So they know that these Romans were Edomites, but they want you to believe that they're not Edomites as well. It says in Leviticus, Rabbah, Rome, under the name Edom, is compared to a boar, and the symbolic name Seir was used by the poets of the Middle Ages not only for Rome, but also for Christianity. It says, on this account, the word Edom was often expunged by the censor and another name substituted. In place of Edom, the word Hazar or swine was occasionally used, perhaps as a mere term of reproach. So it goes on, it's talking about the Midrash. I mean, say no more. These small hats know that they are converts. They know the Romans were considered Edomites, but they want you to believe that they're not part of that same group. They still think they can make you believe that they're not part of that same group. So let me just bring out a couple, because we're doing a lot of talking. Let's just bring out a couple scriptures here, all right? Let's bring out a couple of scriptures. And this is why the Lord, and like I said, this is, you see, there's the scripture that says that they should make their own tongues to fall upon themselves. I think it's Psalm 64. I think it's Psalm 64. Because they can't stop telling on themselves, these people. They can't stop telling on themselves. Yeah, Psalm 64, verse 8. So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. They can't stop telling on themselves, whether it's directly or indirectly, these Edomites. Because these are the because the Lord said that he's gonna, is it in Jeremiah? Jeremiah, Esau, Bear, or is it Obadiah I want? Obadiah I want? I think it's Obadiah. Yeah, Jeremiah. Jeremiah 49 and 10. But I have made Esau bare. I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself, calling themselves Romans, Greeks, Jewish, calling themselves Europeans. He shall not be able to hide himself. The Most High has made him bare. This is the time that the Most High has made Esau bare. Because as we read in the Jewish Encyclopedia, there were times where they just disappeared for hundreds of years. And then they appeared again. And the same thing is back then. By the time the Roman Empire kind of came to its end of its rulership around 325 AD under Constantine the Great, and it was known as more as the Byzantine Empire, Esau disappeared again, literally, up into the Caucasus Mountains. Then they became known as Khazars, Khazarians, these Edomites. And they called themselves Caucasians and came down from the Caucasus Mountains back into Europe and started to conquer Europe from the east, making their way to the west bit by bit. So it's nothing new when these Edomites disappear from history, that no one knows where they've gone to, but they're still there because the Most High says there should be no end of the nations. So this is the time that the Most High is making Esau bare. He shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren and his neighbors, and he is not. So you know, there's no hiding place for these Edomites. There is no hiding place for Esau. Hold on a minute. The Most High is continually revealing who this devil is to the world. Is it Malachi 1? Jeremiah, hold on. Let me go to Jeremiah 23. Jeremiah 23. Oops. Jeremiah 23. Scripture says here. Where is it? Here. Jeremiah 23, verse 24. Can any hide himself in secret places that I shall not see him, says Yahweh? Do not I fill the heavens and the earth, says the Lord? So no one can't hide themselves from the Most High. None. There's this Amos. Is it Amos that one as well? Hold on. Amos 9 and 3. Amos 9. You see, the Most High's judgment is unavoidable. That's the beauty of it all. The Most High's judgment is unavoidable. So, no matter how long Esau's been hiding himself for centuries, getting all the way back to the Renaissance, he's been hiding himself. And this is the time that Esau's being revealed. Esau has been revealed for the last 40 years, 40, 50 years. Esau has been revealed bit by bit, bit by bit. But now it's like it's just gone into overdrive. One West was teaching who Esau was. Their elders, Marshall, Ariah, they were teaching who Esau was. The seven were teaching who Esau was. So for anyone to say that this so-called white man is not the Edomites and still try to make out that they are Japhet or someone else, or to make you, or for anyone to make you think you believe that those small hats are the actual children of Israel, they've lost their mind. But this is the beauty of it. The Most High's judgment is unavoidable. This is why the Lord has made Esau bare, because his judgment is unavoidable, and they're going to have to face their judgment. They're going to have to face their judgment. Amos 9 and 1. I saw the Lord standing upon the altar, and he says, smite the lintel of the door, that the posts may shake, and cut them in the head, all of them, and I will slay the last of them with the sword. He that fleeth of them shall not flee away, and he that escapeth of them shall not be delivered. Though they dig into hell, their bunkers, this is going right into the war. They're going to be hiding in their bunkers, these devils. The elites and the super elites and the globalists, the bankers of these Edomites, though they dig into hell, thence shall my hand take them. Though they climb up into heaven, as we see, there's space stations in the earth's atmosphere, thence will I bring them down. And though they hide themselves in the top of Carmel, I will search and take them out thence. And though they be hid from my sight in the bottom of the sea, they're going to be in their underwater bunkers, their bunkers in the mountains. Thence will I command the serpent, and he shall bite them. And though they go into captivity before their enemies, thence will I command the sword, and it shall slay them. And I will set my eyes upon them for evil and not for good. So there's going to be no hiding place, because the Most High's judgment is unavoidable. It's as simple as that. His judgment is completely unavoidable. I want to go to Isaiah 14, and then we're going to go to Obadiah. Isaiah 14, I think about verse 20. Oh. Here it is. Yeah, verse 20. It says, thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou hast destroyed thy land and slain thy people. The seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. prepare a slaughter for his children, for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise, nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities. And this is what's getting ready to happen. For I will rise up against them, says Yahweh of hosts, and cut off from Babylon. Esau's most prized possession is Babylon the Great, America. And I will cut off from Babylon the name, the remnant, and the son, and the nephew, says the Lord Yahweh. I will also make it a possession for the bittern and pools of water, and I will sweep it with the besom of destruction, says Yahweh of hosts. So what is the besom of destruction? The besom of destruction is the nuclear missiles. That's going to eventually take out Babylon. That's the besom of destruction. We'll grab a few of these presets that brothers have put up here. We're going to go to, let's grab this one here. Brother David, Psalms chapter 83, verse 1. Keep not thou silence, O Most High. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O Most High. For lo, thy enemies make atonement, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thine hidden ones. They have said, come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom, the number one on the list, are the Edomites. And within Edom, the number one tribe is Amalek, the small hats. So the tabernacles of Edom, the house of Edom, America, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Israel. Israel is the main target. America is the other main target. The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites, the Arabs, Moab, the Chinese, the Hagarenes, Gabal, go back to the Hamites, Ammon, Japanese, and Amalek, the small hats. The Philistines, which are also the Egyptians, the Africans, North Africans, with the inhabitants of Tyre. Asher also is joined with them, and they have holpen the choice of Lot. The time is coming. The time is coming. Obadiah, chapter 1, verse 6, Malachi, Obadiah. How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? How are they searched out? Through the scriptures. And from the scriptures, we're able to go into secular history and find out certain things. And this is why I say they've been hiding themselves for a very long time. And there's going to be a massive push. There's going to be like a second push that they're going to try and come against who they truly are. The so-called white man, the so-called small hats, Jewish people. Because they're the same people, like I said. Just that when they conquer, they assume the identity of the nation that they conquered. And that's how they've been hiding themselves. But how are the things of Esau searched out diligently through the scriptures, through the powers of the Holy Spirit? How are his hidden things sought up? And this is what we've done today, once again, bringing out more evidence. Isaiah chapter 29, verse 15. Woe unto them that seek deep to hide their counsel from the Lord Yahweh, and their works are in dark, and they say, who sees us? And who knoweth us? That's Esau. That's them diligently. That's these Edomites diligently trying to hide who they are. They don't want no one to know who they are. That's them diligently trying to hide who they are. Remember what we read in Remember what we read here, right? What they did when they took over from the Horites. This is what they do. It's good to the country. Let's see. Remember what we read here, right? Let's quickly find it again. It's in here already, in this part here. Yeah. Yeah. Remember we read here, the Edomites soon became powerful enough to extirpate the Horites out of Mount Seir, the former inhabitants of the country, whose ways of life they adopted. Then they adopted the ways of the life of the Horites. As amongst the Horites, each tribe was ruled by a prince or a chief, whose position resembled probably that of an Arab sheikh. Later, the Edomites organized themselves just like the Horites. So when Philip the Macedonian, Alexander the Great's father, conquered the Greeks, then they started calling themselves Greeks. When the Romans conquered the Etruscans, finally took them down, because they was first kind of living side by side and they took them down, then they started calling themselves, when the Edomites conquered the Etruscans, who were the original inhabitants of Italy and Rome, then they started calling themselves the Romans. They wanted the world to believe that they were the Etruscans. They were the Romans. The original Romans are the Etruscans. These people here, let me see if I can get it up here. These people here, it says here, Herodotus, for example, argued that the Etruscans descended from a people who invaded Etruria from Anatolia before 800 BC and established themselves over the native Iron Age inhabitants of the region. Whereas, let's see if I can get it up here. Oh, you see, because the Etruscans were the Japhet, were people of color. Something that says it here. Okay. In the event of the middle of the 7th century BC, the chief Etruscan towns had been founded before reaching the Arno River in the north and incorporating all Tuscany, where's Tuscany, Italy, in their dominion. The Etruscans embarked upon a series of conquests, initially probably not coordinated, but undertaken by individual cities. The pressing motive for expansion was that by the middle of the century, the Greeks not only had obtained a grip on Corsica and expanded their hold on Sicily and southern Italy, but also settled on the Ligurian coast, northwest of Italy and southern France. It says the Etruscans' expansions to the south and east was confined at the line of the Tiber River. The river Tiber is where in Italy, by the strong Italic Umbrian people settled beyond it on the south and the Piccaninnies on the east. To the northeast, no such united power opposed their expansion, and since the Apennine Mountains in Aemilia and Tuscany were held by scattered Italic tribes, through these, the Etruscans were able in the middle of the 6th century to push into the Pio River Valley. So these are the original, as the capital of this northward region, they established the old Villanova center at Bologna, the Etruscan city of Felsina, and on the banks of the Reno founded the Marzabotto on the Adriatic coast to the east, the Ravenna of the Rimi, the ancient Arimian, and the Spina traded with the Istria, ancient Istria, and the Greek Dalmatian colonies. So these are the original inhabitants of what we know today of Italy, the Etruscans. These were people of color, so-called black people, but the Etruscans were the sons of Japhet, not the sons of Shem. See? These are people of color. Just so you can see. These are the Etruscans here. These are people of color. These were the sons and daughters of Japhet. See here? These are the Etruscans. These are who the Romans conquered, and they start calling themselves, the Romans became the Etruscans, start calling themselves, start dress like them, everything the Romans did. Took on all of their, these Edomites did that. I keep saying Romans. The Romans called themselves, the Edomites called themselves Romans. But this is what they did. These are the sons and daughters of Japhet, today who we refer to as the Polynesian people. This is who they are. 10 things the Romans didn't want you to know about the Etruscans, because the Romans, the Edomite Romans, conquered them and took on their identity. Look at them. Can you see this? These are so-called black people, but these are the sons of Japhet, not the sons of Shem, just so you understand. But these are another nation of so-called black people, the Etruscans. The Romans conquered them, the Edomites conquered them and called themselves Romans. This is what they did. But that's what Esau does. And these small hats are telling you here. It says the Edomites soon became powerful enough to extirpate the Horites, the former inhabitants of the country, whose ways of life they adopted. This is what they do. As amongst the Horites, each tribe was ruled by a prince or chief whose position resembled probably that of an Arab sheikh. Later, the Edomites organized themselves. That's what they did. They completely adopted all of their customs and started calling themselves, that. The Horites, the Edomites soon became powerful enough, just like they are today, just so you understand. The Edomites soon became powerful enough to extirpate the Horites, the former inhabitants of the country, whose ways of life they adopted. So when they came out of the Caucasus Mountains and came back into Europe and they conquered us, then they adopted our ways. Then they became the royal families and they became the kings and queens and the prince and princesses of Europe. We had already built up Europe. They conquered us, came out of the Caucasus Mountains, conquered us in Europe, and then they adopted our ways. The Edomites have always done this, going right to the beginning when they was given Mount Seir and they went into Mount Seir. According to the Bible, immediately after Isaac's death, Esau settled in Mount Seir, where he had lived before. The Edomites soon became powerful enough to extirpate the Horites, the former inhabitants of the country, whose ways of life they adopted. This is what they do. So it's no different. I just wanted to make you truly understand who we're dealing with here. It's no different. And this is how the things of Esau are searched out. And we go back to here, and it says, and he will destroy in his mountain the face of the covering cast of the people and the veil that is spread over all nations. And this is how we destroy the covering cast, to show you how we know who these people are. Nothing's changed from these Edomites now they was back then to how they are today. Nothing's changed. Hold on. That's a brief one here. Malachi, Obadiah, Jeremiah 32 and 18. Thou showest loving kindness unto thousands and recompenses the iniquity of the fathers into the bosom of their children. After them, the great and the mighty power, Yahweh of hosts, is his name. Israelites are back. Obadiah 1 and 10. Because of the violence against your brother Jacob, you will be covered with shame and you will be destroyed forever. And that's exactly what the Lord is getting ready to do. That's exactly what the Lord is getting ready to do with these Edomites. That's why I said they make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. They're telling you themselves exactly who they are. They're showing you how they go about when they conquer, what they do, how they do it. Brother David, Revelations 18:5, for her sins have reached unto heaven, and the Most High has remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she has rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works, and in the cup which she has filled, fill to her double. How much she has glorified herself and lived deliciously, these Edomites. So much torment and sorrow give her, for she says in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow and shall see no sorrow. That's what America thinks. Truly thinks that. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord power, Yahweh, who judges her. And what is that fire? That fire is going to come in the form of a nuclear missile. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her, all of those that have become confederate with her, and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for her torment, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, alas, alas, that great city, Babylon, the United States of America, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. 1 hour. So that's how Esau moves, just so you understand. There's no more hiding. We have made bare Esau. We have made him bare. We just continue to reveal this man. We just continue to reveal him because he thinks he can continue to hide himself. And the Lord made it clear. But I have made Esau bare. I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren and his neighbors, and he is not. On that note, I pray you are edified. I want to give all the praises and the glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham Rakah Kodash. Yahweh is the name of the Most High God. Yahushai is the name of the Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. Double honors to the apostles, to the elders of Great Millstone. As I always say, keep praying, keep safe, repent, and hold on to this truth, man, because there's no hiding place. No matter how long this man disappears for, he always pops back up again, because the Lord, there is no end of any of the nations. No end of the nations. It's as simple as that. Esau is here. And the Lord is prepping him for his final destruction. All praise and glory to Yahweh, Bashim Yahushai, Basham Rakah Kodash. Shalom, shalom, shalom. And Tawada, brothers, for those beautiful precepts that you were putting up once again. Edifying the flock. Doing what you do best. Beautiful precepts. Tawada for that. All the brothers that were putting up those precepts. And shalom to the sisters who have been edified by this truth. As always, like I said, boy, we just got to keep holding on, boy. Just keep prayed up, family. Keep prayed up. Shalom, shalom, shalom. All praises and glory.